Hey y'all, and welcome to the video. I've got some interesting information and experiences to share in this one. It has to do with the lift pumps that came on 2003, 2004 trucks with 5.9 Cummins, and what you need to know about them and what I've had to deal with them. So let me actually show you. They only ran these fuel pumps for a year and a half. So some 04s had it, some didn't. And if you want to find out, you can just look through your wheel well, and right there's the pump right in front of you. So that's how to tell if you've got one. Now that one you just saw there is a brand new one. It's got like 200 or 300 miles on it. So I got some stories. This is the old one. It actually still works. I'll get to the stories in a minute. Let me give you the rundown on these pumps. So only offered for a year and a half before Chrysler said, we're sick of the warranty work and stuff like that. They're going to go to an in-tank pump, which was more powerful. So reliability was a concern because they suffered from sudden failure. There's a lot of risk with that. And then fuel pressure wasn't the greatest, especially when they started increasing the output on the 5.9 engine. You know, on my truck, which is the detuned standard output, it only makes 250 horse. This provides enough fuel pressure for that output, I'm sure. However, once they got to the 325 horse, 610 torque, I don't think this is adequate. So reliability and fuel pressure was the reasons to replace this thing, or replace this with the in-tank design. But the pros to this is it was a lot easier to replace because you didn't have to drop the tank, and they were cheap at only about $100 a piece. So let me move on to some stories. So I just replaced this last week on my truck. What I was dealing with was there's a little O-ring here, and it was leaking. And so diesel fuel was coming down and it was dripping off, and I was getting about a drop every 6 seconds or so at idle. So I figured that's enough of a leak to need to replace. They do sell the O-rings by themselves for about $5 on Gino's Garage if you just need an O-ring. For me, I was like, this pump has 142,000 miles on it, so I'm going to preventatively replace it before it leaves me on the side of the road. Which reminds me, I was left on the side of the road by one of these pumps one time. I was going up a big grade, 8-10% grade. It was steep, and I was getting to the top of the hill, and suddenly my truck dies. And I pull over, and, well, try to fire the truck back up again. It fired back up for about 2 seconds and shut off again. So I'm like, all right, we need to check the codes. So I checked the codes, and it's like lift pump circuit low. So I'm like, oh, lift pump's gone. So I had to order one. I was actually down and out, and I needed towed. So I'm like, all right, no more running around with these lift pumps if I'm not going to have a spare in the truck. So I bought a spare too, and that was at 240,000 miles, and that was the OEM lift pump. How did I know it was OEM? Now on the 03 model, when they first started making these pumps, it was just, this was fixed. There was no clamp here. It was permanently attached, and then you had your hose. Here you can see this is the updated design that has a removable hose. So that's how you can tell whether yours was OEM or not. That was for 03 model only. Got a little rain coming down, so I'm going to cover that up. But anyways, 240,000 miles is what I got, which is great lifespan for an OEM pump. These things are like 150,000 mile pumps. So with 142,000, I decided to preventively replace that other one. I still have my backup. It's an emergency spare right now, but I got a fresh pump in the truck. So I can't complain too much. So yeah, that O-ring was leaking. And then I was having problems with fuel filter canister leaking too. So that was leaking, and it does that sometimes when the O-ring doesn't seat properly. And my advice to you and to myself for the future is to use like a gear oil or a motor oil to lubricate the O-ring instead of diesel fuel. Diesel fuel is just not working as a good enough lubricant. So to avoid that canister leak again, I'll have to do that, because I was out of town the other day and it leaked a ton of diesel out all of a sudden. Like, it was good for a couple hundred miles after install. Let's get a light on here. You can even see where it was. It's dry now, but it was all over the frame here. It would come down the side of the frame. It would drip off that control arm and there where the control arm's in the frame. And it was all over the starter in there. It was running down the return line and stuff. When that first happened to me a few years ago, I thought my return line was leaking. It was just the O-ring on the canister that was doing it. So right now it seems fine. I just loosened it and re-tightened it because that's all I could do while I was on the road. So that worked. It's been about 200 miles. It hasn't started leaking again, but I'm just going to monitor that for the future. So yeah, it's best to use a thicker oil than diesel fuel to lubricate your O-rings. So that was a little issue I dealt with. Thing is, I'm not too upset because I already had a spare fuel pump, so this cost me $0 to get done. So, and it's something that's been on my mind for a while. So hopefully y'all can take something from this video and from these stories. If you've got a story with these lift pumps, feel free to post down below. I know some people have gone through like 3 of them, and well, that's kind of rough. But y'all have a good one. I will see you in the next video.